And then I'm going to switch it over to you. Okay, there you go.
Right now, I switched internet companies this morning, and I'm not hooked up to my new company yet. From Metronet, because I have been having problems with Spectrum and like Zoom meetings kind of freezing up. So
Yeah.
if that happens, I'll switch to the new internet. Okay, I'm looking for it. Sorry, I'm bored.
Do you want me to just pull it up for you and then like we can go through the slides like you that way?
I think I've almost got it, but thank you. Was it under member training? No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it says PSO session case management.
Yeah, okay, I see it. Yes. Here we go. But I need to share my screen, right?
Yeah. And then you choose, so you should be able to.
Okay. Okay, now it says I'm sharing my screen, so let me now find it. Sorry guys, I should be better at this, but I'm not. Okay, so this we're together for now. We're talking about case management tools in direct service. And I don't know exactly what each of you will be doing at your site. And I have to give the, COVID-19 disclaimer that we all know that, things are probably going to look very different this year. A lot of your case management will be, it could be virtual, it could be over the phone, or it could be in person using, masks and social distancing, depending on what your site is doing and depending on how things go for the rest of the year. So just keep in mind when I share all this information, I'm not going to, go over all the COVID stuff with each thing. Just keep that in mind that we know this year is going to look different. And I know, Caitlin and Holly don't expect anybody to put themselves in any kind of danger or unsafe situation. This is just a little bit about me before we get started. I did grow up in Lewis County, which is in northeastern Kentucky. If you've never heard of it, there's a reason for that. There's nothing there to hear of. I've got 3 kids. I needed to update their ages. They are now 21, 14, and 11. I used to be a teacher and a librarian for Kentucky Public Schools. And then after about 15 years of that, I got really, really, really burned out and decided to make a change to working in mental health. And so I am pursuing a master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I'm almost finished. I'll be finished in October. But it was really hard to switch career fields, and what I found was with my experience in education, I do have a master's in science. Even with all that, I didn't really fit into the mental health field because I didn't have that specific experience. And so I was an AmeriCorps member at HHCK, and working and serving through AmeriCorps was really helpful for me to make that transition into case management and mental health and all that kind of stuff, because like I said, that even though I had that experience prior to, it just wasn't enough to really, I guess, impress anybody, in the very competitive job market that we all are in. But I live in Lexington, and I'm currently the senior housing specialist at HHCK. I did get hired after my AmeriCorps year. We had some staff changes and some people left and some people switched around. And so I was super, super happy to get a full-time position at HHCK. Here's my little family. And there's sweet little Lucy, our dog. She actually passed away at the beginning of the pandemic. She was diabetic, so she had a lot of complications. So case management, a lot of you may know this already, but these are some of the things that case management provides. Case management is not counseling. It's not therapy, but it can address a lot of those needs for people. A lot of times, you can be an ear for people to just vent, or for people to express their frustrations with something. And that's very helpful, because a lot of our clients don't necessarily have a safe place where they can share things that they're unhappy with. So it's good to sometimes be there to listen. You can help with medical needs, help people get connected to mainstream resources like SNAP and Medicaid, Medicare. You can help with law enforcement kind of stuff when people want to, I'm thinking of if people want to file an EPO and they don't know what to do. You can kind of help with those things and just connect people to who they need to talk to. If it's not you, then you can help them find something that they need. So case managers assess needs. They also help clients develop goals based on what they need, and we'll talk more about that as the presentation goes on. Connecting clients to community resources. One really cool thing that you guys might be able to do while you're working virtually and while you're waiting to get started is, go ahead and search online and compile a list of all the resources that are in your particular service area. A lot of places have already done that, but you can kind of search around and start making a list of some names and phone numbers that you can give out to people, just depending on food banks. Food is a huge need for a lot of people. So you might want to call around to some churches and see who's giving out food and when do they give it out and what requirements do you need. All that kind of stuff can be really helpful. And that would be something that you could potentially do from home pretty easily. Case managers, the main thing that we want to remember is that we do try to stay client driven. Everything we do is, it's not based on what I want them to do or what an agency wants them to do. It's what they want to do, because they're the expert in their own life. And we really use a strengths-based perspective. And that just means, we kind of help the client see their own strengths, because people who've experienced homelessness, they have a lot of strengths that they might not even see as a strength, but they're resilient. They have, managed to maneuver all of these systems and get to the point where they're at. And that's pretty amazing. So it's good to help them see that. Little house coming up. So again, here are some of the roles
And I know it's one of the big goals of Homes for All, which is just helping clients access stable housing and helping them stay in stable housing, and also to reduce the likelihood that they will return to homelessness. And our housing focused tools that we use can help that, help them stay housed, because we can help them with tenancy management and sometimes budgeting and just all the different things that you need to consider when you're working through a new lease and a new landlord. We did in the past meet individuals in their home. I still meet some people in their home right now, even with COVID, but it's typically, right now, it's just in like a really, really big emergency situation where there's nothing else that I can do, over the phone or whatever. We've also been scheduling some meetings in the office, and the clients, especially the ones in Frankfurt, can come meet with me in the conference room where we can be socially distanced. It's a pretty big room, so we can space out. And if I do go to their homes, lately I just haven't been going inside. I've kind of been staying outside and wearing a mask and not getting too close, just to protect myself and to protect the clients in case, I would have any germs that I'm carrying with me. And all of our clients honestly have been really receptive to that. Everybody who's come to our office and everybody who I've met in their home since this started, they've all been very, very willing and, willing to wear a mask, and they want to protect everybody just as much. That last bullet says something really important, which is have a plan for each home visit. You kind of don't want to go into it without a plan, because that's when you can kind of get lost in just random conversations that aren't really helpful. At HHCK, our structure for home visits, and like I said, this was prior to everything COVID, we did a home visit with each client at least once a month. And some clients who have like a lot of needs and who are what we call higher acuity, which means they do have more needs, we will visit them more often, sometimes as much as once a week, depending on the issues that they have. It's important to document every home visit and every interaction with clients. I'm really bad about this. That's probably my biggest professional goal all the time, is to improve my documentation. It's difficult because, you do get busy and you might have 10 phone calls in a day while you're trying to work on something else. So it's hard to just document all that. One thing that I will say, I don't do it yet, but it's in my list of goals, is I think it would be helpful just to keep a little notebook right by your phone where you could just jot down, those phone calls like as they happen. And that's a lot, you figure out a way how to get good documentation. And when you all figure it out, you let me know, because maybe you'll have a good idea that will work for me. We do keep an individual case management file for each client, and we give them a folder. Like when they're first housed, we give them a folder where they can keep their documents. That's something that a lot of clients find really helpful, is, if we go ahead and give them that folder, then that's a good safe place for them to just keep all of the paperwork that we give them. And that way they always know where it is when it comes time for them to, need a copy of their lease or need a copy of whatever that we might have given them. Something really important to remember with people who have experienced homelessness is a lot of times they will tend to get a new phone number quite frequently. So I try to always ask each time I talk to a client, just say, oh, do you still have the same phone number? Or is this still a good phone number for me to contact you? And sometimes it is. I mean, I have clients who've never changed their phone number in 2 years, and then others who have a new one every month. So it's just an important thing to ask. Here's a good way to organize some home visits. I see clients in several different counties, so I do try to organize those visits based on the county, and that's just for my own time, and also it helps the organization save money because, they do pay mileage. So if I'm driving, I don't want to drive to, Bullitt County 4 different days a week. I want to, schedule all those visits in one day, and that just kind of consolidates everything and makes it just better for everybody. This slide is about like the structure of your first home visit with somebody. And this is really, really important because the first home visit is really going to set the tone for all of your home visits. So you want to kind of go through a little bit of an informed consent process where you're introducing yourself and explaining what case management is. Explain your role and set boundaries. You will have some clients who think that you're there to be their personal assistant and do everything that they need you or want you to do, and they want you to do it immediately. So it is important to set those boundaries, because you're going to find yourself running like crazy for people if you don't. You need to tell them what kinds of things that you can do. And, don't be afraid to say no if it's something that's out of the scope of what you're supposed to be doing. If someone asks you for something that's just like, not appropriate, you can say no. You're not there to just be all things to all people. One example that just has been happening quite frequently is I'll have clients a lot of times who want me to make a medical appointment for them. They want me to make the phone call and set up the appointment. And I did that for a client. One time I made the appointment, told her when it was. Well, then she didn't go to the appointment. So, the doctor's office, I'm sure, was frustrated. She didn't call and cancel. She didn't show. And so that, then made it more difficult for her to get another appointment with that physician because, she had just was a no-show. And, a lot of doctors, just won't see you if you keep doing stuff like that. So I learned a lesson there, which is, make sure the client has as much at stake in everything as you do. You don't want to do things for clients. It's better to do things with them. So if they don't know how to call and make a doctor's appointment, or if they're just nervous about that, something really good to do is just call with them, just sit there with them, put the phone on speaker, and, like the first time you can just kind of model how to do it, like how to make an appointment. And then that way the client will know for next time what they need to do to make their appointment. So it's all about, with case management, you're kind of trying to work yourself out of a job, meaning your goal is to teach the client everything to do so they can just do these things on their own, so they don't need you anymore. It's important to tell clients up front that you're there for a purpose. It's not really a social visit. Even though it can be, they have fun, they like to have company, and I like to talk to clients too. It's enjoyable, but you want to eliminate distractions. Tell them to turn the TVs and radios off. There really shouldn't be guests when you're doing a home visit. That's kind of for your safety, because you don't know who all their guests are. So you don't really want to be in a house full of people that that you don't know. And then also it's very distracting, and a lot of the work we do is confidential, and so you really don't want guests just sitting in on all that. So you want to have some objectives for each home visit. This says no more than 3 objectives. I would definitely probably try to stick with like one main objective for each home visit, because some things are going to take time. Here are some examples of some plans that you can do. Job applications are a big thing. You know, a lot of clients are really trying hard to get jobs. And one of the frustrating things with job applications lately is most places want you to fill out the application online, which can be frustrating for clients, especially with limited access to a library. I have brought my computer to home visits before, and I'll just use the hotspot on my phone to help people fill out some applications or do things online. That's really helpful if you have the ability to do that. Budgeting is very helpful, helping people with, grocery shopping, making a list. And you can take clients to the grocery store if that's something that you're comfortable with. I've done it before. Just usually if they live kind of close to the grocery store. And that's with clients that I knew really well and had been working with for a long time. And I didn't mind to take them to the store. Now, that can be troublesome if you get that started. If you get started giving people rides, you have some people who are going to ask you for a ride everywhere. So you would want to kind of set some limits up front with that too. The particular client that I took to the grocery store a lot, he was undergoing cancer treatments and he didn't have a car. And so he kind of had a unique need where he really did need some assistance getting to the store and getting back, because he wasn't able to walk there at that time. So that was just kind of something a little bit different. You do want to avoid idle chit chat with clients. Like I said, some people really like the visits, and so they're going to want to just chat with you, and that's hard for me. That's another professional goal for me, is to kind of avoid all that chit chat, because I like to talk to people. And especially now when I'm so lonely in my home all day by myself, I really like to talk to people. So I have to keep myself on track with that. And then at the end of your home visit, you always want to schedule the next one. Go ahead and get that on the calendar while you have the client in front of you, because it might be hard to get in touch with them later. So it's good to just go ahead and schedule it, and then talk about what you did that day, and then go ahead and talk about some things that you might do for the next visit. And then this says something super important, which is always acknowledge something positive. You don't really want you want clients to kind of like case management. And I think most of our clients at HHCK do, because they know that we're on their side basically, and we're there to help, and they enjoy the experience. Here's some boundaries that I might have told you wrong on. So let's see. Define your role. We did talk about that. Be specific about hours of contact. This is very important to avoid burnout. Monday through Friday, 9 to 4:30. Those are our hours at HHCK. Your hours might vary based on your site, but I don't answer my phone after 4:30. I mean, we have at HHCK, we are fortunate to have cell phones for work specifically. So I have a phone number, specifically for that. And I mean, if it's 5 o'clock, I don't answer it, because clients know our hours and they can leave a message and I'll call them back the next day. And that's just to protect my time and to protect my time with my family, and to avoid burnout. When you're in the home, you definitely want to dress appropriately. You want to think about like shoes. You may want to wear, like closed-toed shoes might be more comfortable. There are some clients who have infestations of different bugs and things, and so you want to be mindful of that for yourself. I have not had a problem in 2 years, thankfully, knock on wood, with anything. So, I mean, I'm not saying that to like scare you and make you think it's going to be a problem, but it is something to be mindful of. And you want to address inappropriate remarks from clients right away. So, and this can be hard if you aren't used to doing this, but if you have a client who, maybe they say something racist, I mean, we've had that happen often. You just want to tell them right away, no, I don't want you to say things like that. I don't talk like that, and I don't want you to. And it's okay to say that, and it's okay to be firm. You might have clients who make inappropriate remarks about your appearance, or things like that just make you uncomfortable, and they may not mean anything by it. It could be, one of those things where it's like an old Southern man who calls you honey and sweetie and all that kind of stuff. If you're not comfortable with that, just say so. Because, people can't read your mind, and they're not going to know unless you speak up. Some of the do nots. Do not say, call me anytime you need help with something, because like I said, you have office hours and you're not available 24/7 for anybody. Don't give out your personal phone number. If you don't have a work phone, then you can get like a Google phone number. I've never done that, but there's a way that you can go through Google and get a phone number, and you can call from your own phone, but it'll show up with your Google number. So clients don't have to have your actual number. Don't accept gifts from clients. You'll have people who may try to give you things. It's just not a good practice to get into for a lot of reasons, and you can just blame the agency for that. You can just say, oh, I'm sorry, thank you so much, but HHCK won't let me accept gifts. Or you could say, AmeriCorps won't let us accept gifts. And then that kind of takes it out of your hands. And, clients typically understand that because they know that we're working in the confines of the agency. Don't respond to clients outside of your work hours, because that's just going to set a bad precedent for the future. And then, very important, don't friend clients on social media. This is something else that I think is really important for your own safety, for the safety of your families. You might not feel like it's a big deal because you might think, well, I don't really post that much on social media or whatever. But there's just a lot of information that people can get from your social media accounts. And, the bottom line is, you don't know your clients 100%. You don't know their history. And it's just important to keep your work life and your home life separate. And again, you can blame that on the agency. If you have a client who sends you a friend request, and I've had that happen, I just tell people, oh, they won't let us be friends with clients, sorry, and that works out. So we use a lot of housing focused tools from Org Code, which is an agency based out of Canada. And you've probably heard some things. I think Cassie probably talked about some Org Code things. But on their website, they have a lot of resources that are available for free. And we're going to look at some of those resources today. You can access those from their website. You can print them out. You can choose what's going to be helpful for your client. So this is a crisis plan. And it's really helpful because you basically can just help the client think proactively about a potential crisis. They're probably not going to be in a crisis when you do this crisis plan. That's not the time to do it. The time to do it is before a crisis. So they can identify some people that they may want to contact. And a lot of times they won't have anybody. So, you can put yourself down as a contact for an emergency, or you can put your agency down, or you can remind them that they can contact some of the different community resources that are available. Because surprisingly, and it's, very sad to think about, but a lot of people don't have anyone in their life that they would trust, with anything in a crisis. So this is just a helpful thing to think about. It's interesting. I think it's interesting, that very first question says, my definition of a crisis is, and it's really interesting when you're working with clients to see what kind of things they consider a crisis. Because sometimes it's very, very basic things like not having any food. That's a crisis to a client, and that's it. And they'll just kind of be like, well, anything else I can handle. So that again goes back to the strengths-based case management, where our clients are typically pretty good at handling a crisis because they have a lot of practice in doing so. This one is the guest policy, and this is something that's really, really helpful, because when people who have been experiencing homelessness suddenly have housing, one of the things that they often try to do, which is so nice and kind of them, but also problematic, is they try to bring people in, like their friends who are still homeless. They try to bring them into their apartment or house. And the reason why we can't do this, or why they can't do it, is because I don't know how many of you guys are renters, but when you're a renter, you have a guest policy. Everybody does. Sometimes you can't have a guest stay with you for more than 1 week. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. I rent in Lexington, and I think my guest policy is 2 weeks. We're not supposed to have anybody stay here for more than 2 weeks. And people will tell on our clients, like their neighbors will call, and there's always a nosy neighbor who's paying attention to that with clients, and really go over that guest policy and let them, empower them to realize that, this is your house. You are in charge here. So what are your house rules? And a lot of clients will say, I don't want anybody to smoke in my house. I don't want anybody to do drugs in my house. Some people will say, I don't want anybody to come over anytime. And you need to tell them that that's okay, because they are in charge. And that is very empowering to a lot of people. So this continues with the guest policy stuff. You want to talk about these kinds of things, like, what if you have some guests over and they get in a fight? What are you going to do? Are you okay with people coming over and eating your food? Because that could happen. What are you going to do about noise complaints? Unfortunately, a lot of apartments have pretty thin walls. And when you have a party or have a few people over, it can get noisy. And like I said, there's always a neighbor who's going to complain. And these are just some, typical tenancy management things that unfortunately can cause our clients to get evicted if their landlord just gets tired of it. So these are important things to talk about. And if our clients have never been a renter before, if they have never been the main one on the lease, they might not know this stuff. If they have gone from like a parent's house to staying with friends to, kind of a more transient lifestyle, they might not know that, there is a guest policy, or, you will get potentially evicted if you have noise complaints and things like that. So it's to just point it out. This is one of Org Code's really interesting tools. This is the Honest Monthly Budget. And typically, working on financial help with people is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of aggravating when a lot of places want to do it, because it's like, well, if you don't have any money, you can't make a budget. And it's just frustrating for everybody involved when you're trying to talk to clients about that. Because honestly, a lot of people who have experienced poverty or who are currently in poverty are a lot better at budgeting than a lot of us. I remember I was at a meeting, and Art from the Lexington Fair Housing Council said, made a really good point. And he said, like, so when I make a budget mistake, I have a little bit of wiggle room in my budget, and like nothing bad happens to me. If I spend too much here, I've got some savings, or I've got some money to make up for it. Whereas our clients, if they make a mistake on their budget, they might not have anything extra to make up for that. So that's where people kind of get this stereotype that people in poverty are just not good with their money. And if we can just teach them how to, manage their finances, they'll be fine. That's just not true in any way, shape, or form. But this Honest Monthly Budget is helpful because sometimes clients will start to get income either through SSI, SSDI, or a job. And so it is helpful to go through this budget. And what I really like about it is it goes through a lot of things that, you may not consider that you're spending money on. And then it also goes through a lot of informal ways that people do get money, like doing odd jobs, gambling. Some people might be good at gambling and, get some money from that. Pawning stuff. Sex work is on here. Drug running or drug dealing. Odds are your clients, unless you have a really honest client, they're not going to be honest with you about any money that they make dealing drugs. But this could help them consider that in their budget. And that's why I like it, because, like I said, it just thinks of all the ways that you could spend money. And it also mentions, like, are you spending money on your girlfriend or boyfriend? Are you spending money on legal fines? And just all the different things that you might be spending money on. So it's an interesting budget, and it's helpful. It's helpful for clients because sometimes when we go through this, it'll be like, oh, wow, you technically on paper, you have $200 a month that you could be spending. And we all know that, on paper is very different than reality, especially if you've tried to make a budget yourself, that that's difficult to do. So, I don't know. I like this tool. It's helpful for us when we have clients who are not, at HHCK, they do pay an occupancy charge to us. So when they have income, they pay 30% of their income to our agency in rent. And so we pay their rent in full to their landlord, and then they pay us the occupancy charge. And that helps us, keep our programs running. And so if we have clients who kind of get behind on their occupancy charge, a lot of times we'll do an Honest Monthly Budget just to help them kind of keep those things in mind and help them get their occupancy charge paid and their utilities paid and those kind of things. I feel like I'm just talking. I don't know. You guys think of questions that you might have. I can't see like a chat box or anything. So if you come up with any questions, just put them in the chat box and I will check those out at the end. This tool is a week of meaningful activities. It's very helpful because a lot of clients, once they get housed, they're kind of like, okay, now what do I do? Especially if they do collect disability and they aren't really able to get a job per se, or if they don't have family. in the area that they can hang out with. This is good because it helps clients plan for some things that they can do. And that's something else that you guys could do maybe from home while you're working on compiling a list of community resources. You could also come up with, maybe do some research and try to find some free or very low cost activities in your area. The library is always great. Like I said, I'm not sure if they're back open yet or if they're doing programs or what the libraries are doing with COVID, but in normal circumstances, libraries are amazing because they do offer a lot of free activities and free programming, and clients can check out movies, they can check out books, they can do all kinds of things. Also, I think you could help clients discover some of the parks in the area because, people might like to go hiking or take their kids to play in the park or, anything like that. Anything that's free or low cost. And it's really hard to find that kind of stuff. So researching that would be helpful for clients. This tool is a risk assessment, and this would be something that you may want to do more towards the beginning of your time with the client, and it just goes through a lot of risk assessment things. Self-harm. Does any family member bully other people? Different conflicts with the law, like if there's a violent offense or a sexual offense. And the reason why this is helpful for you to know is because some of these things can affect a client's housing. And that's what we always go back to with housing focused case management, is everything we do goes back to, well, how does this affect your housing? If it doesn't put your housing at risk, then it's not necessarily something for me as your housing case manager to help you with. But if it is going to put your housing at risk, then yes, I definitely want to help. Here's some more risk assessment items. This tool is support in domains, and I like this tool as well because it helps clients identify their own strengths and it helps them identify some risks to their housing. So like you can see, this one's already kind of filled in with some samples, and the person says for a strength that I'm really good at stretching $1 as far as I can. And then over on the risks, they say, if I get arrested again, that'll be my third strike and I'll be locked up for a really long time. Then I won't be able to keep my housing. So helping clients identify those risks is helpful. It can be hard because a lot of times clients will say, I don't have any risks. I have no risks to my housing. And it's like, well, honestly, and in reality, you have spent the last, we have some clients who've spent the last 30 years homeless. And so clearly there are some risks somewhere to your housing, or else you would have been housed prior to our program, and that's not really the best way to word that with clients, but it is true. Even if they say there are no risks, there probably are. Now, if you have a client who's been housed for several years and they've done great and have good tenancy management, then yeah, they probably don't have any risks for housing at that time. And that's okay too. Some people don't. That's a good thing. This is the readiness ruler, and I'm going to talk about it a lot more in the next presentation if you are going to participate in that, in the motivational interviewing one. But just really quickly, if you're not going to be in that presentation, this is a great tool to help a client identify a change that they want to make in their life. And then you can just go through and rate that, or they can rate that. Like, how important is it to me? How ready am I to make this change? How confident am I to make this change? And this can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be housing related. One of the things that pops into my mind is, sometimes people want to reduce their drinking or reduce their drug use. And you can go through and talk about, well, how important is that to you? It might be a 10 on importance. They might be super, super, super anxious to stop those things. But maybe on readiness, it's like, it's a 3. I'm not really ready to do it. I'm not ready to give that up. And confidence, they might be like a 5 on confidence. Like, I just don't know what I can do. So these are just good talking points for you with a client and with their goal. Like, if they say they're not confident, you can say, well, why aren't you confident? What makes you feel that you're not gonna succeed? So that's a really good tool. And like I said, we'll talk about that more in the motivational interviewing. And then here's the old stages of change model. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this before, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the MI training too. But when we make a change, we all have these phases that we go through: pre-contemplation, contemplation, determination, action, then sometimes and very often relapse, and then we enter into maintenance. So this model is for anything. I mean, I know when we hear the word relapse, we automatically think of like drug use or alcohol use, but it's really for anything. Like for me and like diet and exercise, I'm kind of in pre-contemplation for that. Like, I want to do it. I know it's a good thing for me to do, but I haven't really made a plan for what I'm going to do. And so I'm just kind of floating around in like the space where I'm thinking about it, but I'm not really ready to make a change. So you can think about the stages of change model for really any change that anybody wants to make. Again, you can ask people, why didn't you mark yourself higher? What is preventing you from being more towards a 10? That's a good question to ask, because that can help people identify their own barriers. You want to be a 10 on your readiness, and you want to be a 10 on your confidence, or close to a 10. So what's keeping you from that? And a lot of times people will say, well, in the past, I've tried and I failed. And so I don't have confidence in myself to do it more. Quality of life survey is another really good tool where you're just asking the client, how has their situation improved since they've been housed? And I love this tool because it tells us a lot of information as providers. It's interesting to see the improvements that having a stable home make for people, in like the amount that they're sleeping, or their stress level, or their overall mental health, and their happiness and their safety. Like, that's really typically we see an improvement in those things. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes people will say it stayed the same or even gotten worse. And if a client tells you that something has gotten worse since they've been in housing, that's a really good talking point, for you to say, well, what has happened, to make things worse? Like, why is your happiness not better? Or why is it, has it gotten worse? And you can ask all those things, and it's just a good talking point. And then finally, I think this is the last one, exit planning. When a client is ready to either exit your program or to exit case management, you can go through and talk about a lot of these different things. And again, this is being proactive. It's thinking about some possibilities, thinking about some problems that might come up before the problems are there. So they can, kind of think about where they need to focus. I told you this was my bad area is documentation and organization, but it's important to, have all that stuff documented, because here's why. A lot of our agencies, probably most of them, operate on grants, And you need that documentation when you go to apply or reapply for grants. So you need to be able to prove that, you need to be able to prove what you've been doing and the positive effects that that's had on people. It's good to have all that ready and available. This is the template for home visit summaries that we use at HHCK. You can come up with your own thing, or your agency might have something that they want you to use. I will say, as far as notes on home visits, you do want to be kind of brief and stick to the facts. Don't ever put your opinion in. Don't ever say like, well, I think the client is on drugs, or I think this or that. Just do facts. Notes can be subpoenaed for like different court cases, different family court cases and things like that. So you just want to keep them brief and keep them factual always. And then this is a page for special circumstances that sometimes, it might not be a regular home visit, but it might be just something that we want to make a note of for a client. And so we'll just use this to keep it in their folder. One good way to do some documentation is just do a short weekly case review where you just write in your clients, and that acuity and prior acuity score, that's coming from their SPDAT score. So I don't know how many of you are going to be utilizing those, but that's where those scores are coming from. But this is a great way for you to take some notes about different things. Some final tips. Make sure you are flexible, because people will cancel on you sometimes for home visits or case management, and you do want to just don't take it personally, because there's a lot going on in people's lives. We're all very busy. So just reschedule with people. If people miss, 2 or 3 home visits in a row, it's okay to be a little bit firm. We have a particular letter that comes across a little bit firm that's very helpful. So if you would like a copy of that, if you're ever having trouble with somebody being home for home visits or whatever, you can reach out to me and I can give you a copy of that. You do want to remind clients about home visits if you can. You can send them a text or something in the mail, or like a little card. Like when you go to the doctor's office, they write you a little card. You can do that for clients, just something that they can have a visual reminder of it. And then model respect for your client's time. If you want them to respect your time, then, you need to respect theirs. So something that you want to remember is if you're running late, apologize for that. Most people, will give you a lot of grace in those situations, but I just think it's always the kind thing to do to respect their time, because our clients, they have a life too, and they're busy too. And it's just a good thing to do. Another helpful thing is to have a template saved for missed appointments. Just save a little letter that's like, sorry I missed you, and then you can kind of leave that in their doorway or whatever. And then always schedule yourself a break when you're doing home visits. Like I said, I kind of try to schedule all one county in one day, but don't overload yourself with your schedule. Make sure that you do have a little bit of a break in there, especially for lunch or some time to relax. Now, this is a great video, and I think we just have like 5 minutes left, and I'm not sure how long the video is. I was trying to hurry because it is how long it is. So it's 12 minutes long. So actually, to this, and you can watch it when you have time.
It's really, really, really good, because compassion fatigue is something that you can get in this field, like a lot, because you are working with people who have trouble with with just many different things, and it can be stressful on you, especially if you're an empathetic person and you kind of hold other people's issues and problems inside. If you're one of those people, then you really want to watch this video, because it's going to give you some tips and tools to kind of combat that, because it can be overwhelming sometimes. Let me look at the chat now. Yes, Caitlin said to buy you cigarettes, for sure. Yeah, we have a client who often will ask us to like stop and pick up a pack of cigarettes for him, and we're like, no. The same client asked me one day, I was on my way to his house, and he said, will you bring me a cup of coffee? And I was like, no. And I've known him for a while, so I get pretty, blunt with him. And he was like, no, I don't mean stop at the store. I just mean go to your old office and fix me a cup and bring it to me. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Is harm reduction considered as a plan? Yes. We definitely support all avenues of harm reduction. That is, research-based, and that's what works for clients who are going through like a substance use problem. We don't ever tell clients, we're housing first, and so we think and we believe that housing is a human right, and we don't believe you have to be sober or clean or whatever the term might be. Clean is kind of a bad term to use, because that implies if you're doing drugs that you're dirty. But addiction is not a moral failing. Addiction is a disease, and so harm reduction is kind of the way to go with that. I had a client who was a pretty severe alcoholic, and he had some trouble with the law, because he would get drunk and then kind of take off on a walk, and so they would get him for public intoxication. And so he and I talked. We used that thumbs up, thumbs down tool, and did some motivational interviewing, and we talked about okay, so if you're going to get drunk, why don't you just make sure that you stay home, because you don't want to get arrested, and you don't want those problems, so maybe you can just stay home. And honestly, having that conversation with him really opened the door for him to come to the conclusion on his own that he wanted to reduce his alcohol consumption. I didn't tell him that. I didn't say stop drinking, although I would love for him to, just because it is affecting his health in many ways. But he kind of came to that conclusion on his own. And when we all know that when somebody tells you to do something, it's like, I'm not going to do it just because you told me to, or that's how I am anyway. Like, if people tell me you need to do this, I'm like, oh no, I don't. And that's kind of a human reaction to people telling you what to do. So yeah, that was a long answer for harm reduction. Yes. And as far as drug use, I know a lot of places will give you free Narcan, especially if you tell them, and actually you can just buy it at the pharmacy. If you just go to the pharmacist and say, I'm a case manager and I work with people who, have a lot of substance use problems, and I want some Narcan because it's helpful for me to have on hand, then you can do that. and I'm not sure how much it is, but there are a lot of places who give it to you for free. And then some, and I've given that to clients before. I've told them that they can go get it too. But then I've also just given different little bottles of it to people that I know, have a history of overdose or whatever. And yes, Holly put in the chat, check with local health departments. And that's a good place to check because they can get it to you for free. So that is, I think that's our time. I feel like I just talked and talked and talked and kind of word vomited on you guys. But that, let me see if I can put the link to that compassion fatigue in the chat because it really is so good. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so there's the link to the little compassion fatigue video. It's a TED Talk. It's 12 minutes long. So if you would like to watch that, that would be great. And Holly also put in the chat, if you guys are on the phone and can't see it, she said health departments have been offering Narcan trainings as well. So check their websites in your community. Oh, thank you guys so much. Does anybody else have any questions? Or anything to add? Cassie, do you have anything to add? Or Jenny, or anybody?
I really don't. I feel like you covered everything so well. I mean, the tools really can be helpful. I think they are geared more towards like a new client. Like typically once you go through them, like we usually will, house someone, kind of start the tools in full SPDAT right away. Did you talk about the full SPDAT much at
No.
all? I think I talked about it a little bit in my presentation, but full SPDAT is definitely an awesome case management tool as well, especially with clients that are really hard to like get to open up about anything or get to like have a conversation, because it kind of just assesses every single area of their life and you get to know them and their story, and then you can repeat it to kind of track how they're progressing as well. So if you have some clients that you're like really struggling with, don't know which tools are going to work from them, or like you're just having a hard time, I would recommend using the full SPDAT.
I'm not sure if you already addressed this and I may have missed it, but can you all talk about like what OR code is and where they access these tools? Because I don't think people are as familiar.
Oh, yes. I'll put a link in the chat. But Orco, they're out of Canada, and they're just kind of like, I don't know, they're like the people who invented the VI SPDAT and the SPDAT, and it's like research-based. They're a consulting company, so they do a lot of, well, it's just orgcode.com actually. But they do a lot of trainings and different things.
If you go to their website, sorry, Kim, I was just.
No, that's okay. There's the website.
All the tools are free on there, so you can like just click tools you can use, and it'll have like all of the housing focused tools that Kim just showed.
Yeah, that's where I've got all those. So you can just print them right off. Ian, I can't ever say his last name. Is it Ian DeYoung?
Yeah.
Okay. He wrote a book. The book on ending homelessness is what it's called, and I haven't read it yet, but I really want to. So that would be something else that, if you guys are really interested in housing and homelessness, you may want to see if you can get a copy of that book to read, because I'm sure it's good. The author, let me see, Ian. I'm gonna have to look up how to spell his last name.
I think it's DEJONG.
I think so too. But he even spells Ian funny. Maybe it's just Ian De. Yes, it looks like Ian DeJong, but that's not how you pronounce it, I know. Thank you, Jenny and Kathy.
It would be a good idea if you're interested in their stuff just to follow like their Facebook page, because they always put out like any new materials or information on there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. For those of you who want to stay for motivational interviewing, let's get started at 2:45. Does that work, Kim?
Yep, that's great.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, has everyone joined back with us? Okay, great. Kim, do you want to share your screen again for the motivational interviewing PowerPoint? Great.
I like your background, Kim. That's so
I do too.
colorful.
Don't forget to unmute yourself, Kim.
Okay. Well, now my things aren't coming up. Over here. Oh, there they are. Now, this a funny story about the colorful background. So, the classes that I take are also online, and a lot of times I have to do presentations like this and share our screen, whatever. Well, I have an 11-year-old boy, and he changed my screen to like this giant monkey and this huge gorilla, and it was very embarrassing because when I popped up my screen, it was like, oh. And now I've lost the ability to just present this. That's interesting. Wonder where it went. I don't know. Okay, we'll just look at it this way.
Hold
It's
on,
like
that says go back to
that was my Carter, my 11-year-old saved that as my but then I went to different like the big monkey and then everybody was like, what is on this one? Yeah. He changed my Google picture, my personal picture of the baby. Now, I don't know. Every time I send an email to somebody from my personal email, it shows a Pekingese, and so people probably don't even have a Pekingese. It's not.
the interview or the
Yeah, we don't have it. I'm sorry, I had it already. Oh,
Yep.
You offer patient. Just wow.
Yeah, Kim, I think something may have changed with like your internet connection, as you were kind of lagging when you were talking just now. Yeah, you're lagging.
Oh, I think my whole. Let's see. We're going to do all this. But I'll let you know how many of you are Lexington, but Spectrum, or not Spectrum, but MetroNet has just started kind of coming around. Let me do the password. Well, shoot.
You sound fine now.
Do I? Okay. Okay, good. Well, let me just pop in this password and we'll try out MetroNet. Of course, they don't ever make the password something normal. It's always just a bunch of letters. Okay, how's that?
Yeah, good.
Okay, great. I'm just going to leave it like this because it popped up the same way, and I'm not going to go through all that to try and change it to a normal slideshow. But we're going to talk now more about interviewing. It's still me. I don't know if anybody new has joined this call who was not on the other one, but I'm the Senior Housing Specialist at HHCK. I was an AmeriCorps member, and I loved AmeriCorps so much. I served at HHCK. It really changed my life, and I hope it does yours as well. It was like a super fun year. And then after I served in AmeriCorps, I got a full-time position with HHCK, which was super exciting, and I'm very happy to be there. But I'm also a graduate student in clinical mental health counseling, and I will be graduating in October, thank goodness, because it's just about to do me in as a human being. I just really can't take much more of it, take much more of school, and I'm sure some of you all feel the same way. But motivational interviewing is a really widely used technique in therapy and in case management too. You will hear a lot of people use it. And if you use motivational interviewing in your case management this year with AmeriCorps, go ahead and throw that on your resume. It's not something that you need to be like certified in or really intensely trained in. You can use these techniques, you know, without any further training. There are some like therapy techniques that, oh, you're not supposed to say you can do if you're not like, if you haven't attended like a certain special training. But motivational interviewing is not like that. So on your resume, you could put something like, used motivational interviewing techniques, you know, to help clients, blah, 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 meet their goals. And it's kind of like a good little buzzword for things. Like I said, it's widely used. So what it does is it just kind of helps people resolve ambivalent feelings and insecurities to find their internal motivation. So it's all about making changes in their behavior. And you want the changes to be client-centered, like it's their idea. You never want to go into a motivational interviewing session where you are trying to make the change, because like we said in the other presentation, if you were here for that, that doesn't work. You know, people need the internal motivation to truly make a change. We can't make changes for other people. You know, you can't make an effective change that's long lasting for your spouse. You can't make a change for your children. It really has to come, you know, from yourself, from your internal drive. Motivational interviewing is very practical. It's a very practical technique. That's what makes it so appealing to a lot of people, is the practicality of it makes it kind of easy, and it makes it kind of second nature to utilize. You're going to be empathetic when doing motivational interviewing, and it's really short term. It typically just lasts like 1 to 3 sessions. It's not something that's going to be, you know, months and months and months. It encourages clients to talk about their need for change and their reasons for wanting to change, and then your role as the interviewer is just to get that conversation started. Your role is to ask questions that, you know, help the client see, you know, what they are already kind of internally feeling, and to help them, you know, find the words for that. So this just tells us, you know, in like the clinical world, what we just talked about, that the clinician is not there to force clients to change. And you're just kind of wanting to let the clients find it within themselves to change. So MI's roots are in addiction. It started with clinicians who were substance abusers from all around the realms of substance, you know, people with substance use disorder, because as you know, substance use disorder doesn't discriminate, and it goes, you know, all the ranges of people, and, you know, income levels and education levels and whatever, you know, they can experience substance use disorder. So it's very helpful in that field. And then people just kind of started branching out with it. It's used in healthcare a lot, actually. Nurses and doctors and therapists, like physical therapists, occupational therapists, use motivational interviewing to help their clients, you know, make changes. It's used in education and in criminal justice. So it's something that, you know, kind of is helpful in a lot of fields. So you're going to want to use motivational interviewing for clients who are unmotivated and unprepared for a change. So if you have a client, and a lot of our clients, you know, people who have experienced homelessness, they can kind of get to a point sometimes where they don't feel necessarily motivated to make changes, and that's because of maybe their past experiences where they've tried to make a change and it has failed, and they can kind of get a little bit, you know, just a little bit worn down, and they can kind of lose that sense of, you know, accomplishment in things. It can be used with any goal. No goal is too big or too small to go through this process with. Like I said, it can be used with addiction and also managing physical symptoms like diabetes and heart disease. That's where, you know, some of that in the medical field comes in, where they use MI to help people, you know, maybe work on their diet and all that kind of stuff. it is appropriate to use the people who are hostile, which you'll encounter those people who are just kind of not really into anything. But what's good about motivational interviewing for people who are feeling angry or hostile is it does allow them an opportunity to move through all the emotional stages of change. So you're going to kind of walk beside them through that pre-contemplation and the contemplation, and you can let them get some of their hostility out, and you can let them get some of their anger out, because those are really valid emotions. People don't need to always squash their anger or their hostility, because sometimes, you just need to get it out. But it doesn't work in all scenarios. I thought this was really important to share. Like if you have a client who's already really motivated to change, you don't want to pull out your motivational interviewing techniques for that client, because it can actually cause them to kind of regress through the steps. Because if you have somebody who, let's just use exercise as an example. If you have somebody who's already exercising really well and they've already found a routine and they're already, at that point in the stages of change, you don't want to walk them back through and kind of ask questions that are going to get them to start again with the thinking of like, well, why am I doing this? And you don't want to plant those seeds of failure for somebody who's already motivated to change. So this work, motivational interviewing, was really started by William Miller in the 1980s, but it evolved from Carl Rogers, Carl Rogers is like the, as far as like clinical counseling goes, he's kind of the unconditional positive regard man. That was his theory, where he's just super person-centered and super client-centered. And he is like, I don't know, just personally, he is somebody that I really identify with as a future therapist, because I just like the idea of, person-centered and client-centered, because that's who it's really about. So it's a twofold process. You want to increase the person's motivation, and you want the person to make the commitment to change. And so here's a little choice map, and it's kind of hard to see. I'm sorry about that. I tried to scan it, and then it was in black and white, and I hated that, so I just took a picture of it so it would be in color. But this just kind of leads through like some of the choices that we do make moment to moment when we're trying to change. And so you can see the person is starting, and you can either choose to be a learner, or you can go down the judger path. And this is something that I would use this little picture, with a client, and you could help them answer some of those questions that the guy's asking on the learner path, which is just like, what can I learn? What assumptions am I making? What are my choices? What's best to do now? And you can see that the man on the judger path, he's just asking, whose fault is it? And then he's asking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? Why am I such a failure? Why are they so stupid? Why bother? And so, sometimes things like this are helpful for people to see that, they do have a choice in the way that they're going to look at things. We can constantly ask, whose fault is it? We can constantly ask, what's wrong, but, and sometimes that feels good to sit in that for a little while and to kind of sit in the despair of things, but it's not really helpful, and it's not really going to help you make the change that you want to make. I know sometimes, since, our current national administration can kind of leave you feeling a little bit dejected. I know that I sometimes find myself just kind of sitting in a place where I just want to blame people and just want to say, well, why aren't they doing anything about this? Because they're the ones who can. And then I feel so much better when I can get myself out of that, and when I can think about, well, what can I do, right now to kind of help somebody. I guess that's kind of a good example, but this is a decisional balance worksheet, and this is not an org code thing. This is something, this is just an MI thing, and you could use this with a client where they could write, or you could help them write some of the pros and cons. This is just like a pro-con sheet where it's the pros and cons of making the change, and then the pros and cons of not changing at all. And if we wanted to use substance use as an example, so if you're working with a client who, maybe has a problem with drug usage, you could talk about what are the pros and what are the benefits of, either decreasing your usage or trying to stop your usage altogether. And they're probably going to be able to come up with a lot of pros. And then you kind of think, well, what are the cons? There's no con of like stopping using heroin, but yeah, there might be for that client who, enjoys using drugs. They're going to lose their coping mechanism. That's a con. They're going to lose some friendships, maybe. That's a con for them. They're going to lose one of the ways that they like to spend time. So there are some pros and cons to making changes. And then what are the pros and cons of not changing? A pro of not changing, I guess, if the person is content with the status quo of their life, then they're able to just keep things how they are. And then a con of not changing, drug use could, obviously be, I think in 12-step language, it's like jails, institutions, and death is kind of what the 12-step people say as a consequence of continuing drug use. We talked a little bit about the stages of change in the last presentation, and here they are again in a different way. And what I like about this stage of change is right in the middle, it says upward spiral, learn from each relapse. And again, the term relapse kind of automatically makes us think of substance use. And I know that people that I have worked with who have substance use disorder, relapse can be really hard on people, especially if they've had a long time sober for a while. If they get some of that sober time built up and then they do have a relapse, a lot of times they go onto like a downward spiral where they just kind of give up. And it's like that with a diet. When we start eating more healthily and we have, a month or two of success with that, and then all of a sudden we have a weekend where we just kind of, relapse and go back to our old patterns of behavior, then we can just be like, well, whatever, I've already ruined this weekend, I might as well just do whatever I want. It's that same kind of thinking. It's really difficult, but you can learn from a relapse. And so if you're working with a client, with motivational interviewing, and they've gotten to that point where they've made some changes, but they did fall back into the old patterns of behavior, you can, help them see that as a learning experience and help them not experience the shame that would come with that, but they can see, well, what happened? What were the triggers that caused me to relapse? What can I do differently next time to kind of avoid that? Some people will say that relapse is inevitable when you're making a change, that it's going to happen no matter what. I don't really like to say that because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We can't predict the future. Some people start to make a change and they do well with it forever and they don't have a relapse. Also, just really quickly, as far as relapses go, I don't know how much you guys have ever talked about a lapse versus a relapse. So, in the mental health and then in the addiction world, a lot of people make a distinguishment. I guess it's not a word. A lot of people distinguish between a lapse and a relapse, and so they'll consider a lapse to be like a small slip, kind of, thinking about it in terms of the diet again. A lapse could be, oh, I went out to eat and just ate whatever I wanted for one meal. That would be a lapse.
Because if I got back on track, if I ate what I wanted for one meal and like blew my plans, then but then I got home and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to refocus and get back on track. That's just a lapse. It's a small period of time where you fell back into an old pattern and then readjusted where you were going. But then a relapse is considered, a longer period of time where you have a lapse, but you don't kind of correct your behavior. You're unable to get yourself back on track. And so that's what they consider like an actual relapse, where, you kind of need some interventions to get back on track. Here's another model of the stages of change. This one is showing it as stair steps. And this is just, like I said, it's the same information, but just in a different model. And you can show these to clients. A lot of people, unless they've kind of been through some treatment or some therapy, they may not have been introduced to these stages of change. And it's really helpful for people to see this and to see that every decision that we make, we kind of go through these stages and we don't really realize it. And so it's helpful for people to realize where they are in those stages. Kind of just helps them understand their process of thinking. In pre-contemplation, how you can recognize that people are in pre-contemplation is they usually don't have any intention of changing. They deny having a problem typically. They might show up to therapy or to coaching or to case management because other people want them to change. And this could include law enforcement, like people in drug court or people in situations where others have told them to change. And they can feel very demoralized. They can feel that their situation is hopeless. And again, that's because of past experiences where they've possibly tried to change and were not successful. So they just feel like, well, I tried. Contemplation is the next step, and this is where a person acknowledges the problem and they begin to sort of think about what to do. They struggle to understand the problem, its causes, and its solutions. So they want to change, but they don't really know how. They don't really know how to get from point A to point B. It all seems just very difficult. And they're not quite ready to make a change. And so a lot of people may spend a while in this stage. It might be a long time while they're in the contemplation stage, because making a change is hard, and especially when it's something that people have done for years and years and years. They've done it one way. It's really hard to give up those actions. Preparation is when they start to make plans. They might not have resolved all their ambivalence to change, like they might not have resolved all their ideas that they're not going to be able to do it. But in this stage, in the preparation stage, it's important to develop a firm, detailed action plan, and you can help a client develop a very detailed action plan and how they want to change, depending on their goal. whatever their goal is going to change what, the action plan is. But thinking again about substance use, because that is, where motivational interviewing kind of got its roots. If people are wanting to stop using a substance, part of that plan could be, okay, think about how are you going to get through the detox process? What's your plan for support in the future? This would be a good time to connect people with like maybe 12-step programs if they are so inclined to go that route, or therapy. As far as detox or treatment, a therapist could recommend inpatient treatment for certain people if they meet certain criteria. But as far as detox goes, just throw this out there: if you encounter people who are trying to work on substance use, the only drugs that people can actually die from detoxing are benzodiazepines, which are like Xanax and things like that, and alcohol, actually. So those two, if you have a client who has an addiction to alcohol or to benzos, then they really need to be under medical care for that detox process, because they can die from that. Now, any other drug, meth, heroin, all those things, they're not going to die. They'll be very uncomfortable and very unhappy. And it's an important time, because they could give up during that stage of detox because they are so uncomfortable, but they won't die just from not having the drug. I think that's interesting because, in our minds, we kind of think of alcohol as, I don't know, it's kind of like we think, well, alcohol is okay, it's legal, it's, very, like, it's used by a lot of people, but it's actually one of the more dangerous things to get away from. And then people move into action. This is where they are really doing the work. They are modifying their behavior. You can see a change in them. There's a change in their level of awareness and in their emotions and in how they're thinking about the change process. Maintenance is, just continuing that action. Maintenance can last from 6 months to a lifetime. And then this is where the lapses and relapses can come in this maintenance phase. I know, like, Weight Watchers, I used to be in Weight Watchers, and they would have they would call it like maintenance when you got to your goal weight, and then you were on, when you were just maintaining your goal weight, then you were considered in the maintenance stage for Weight Watchers. And so that's probably where they got that from. And so then there's a stage called termination, which is where the behavior no longer presents a temptation and the client has complete confidence that there won't be a relapse. For people who have reached a point, maybe in their exercise routine or in their weight loss where they just feel like, this is my way of life. I'm not going to stop this. I don't know. I think this phase is kind of, I guess maybe because I personally, the struggles that I have, I've never seemed to get myself, like with the weight loss and exercise, I've never seemed to really get myself to what I would consider to be like a maintenance phase. So I think, like, for me, it's hard to imagine a termination phase. And even with, substance use, it's like you think, well, complete confidence there won't be a relapse. It's like, do people, you hear about people with like 20 and 30 years sober who still talk about taking things one day at a time. And so it's just an interesting phase for me, the termination phase. It's like, well, can you ever really fully let your guard down on a negative behavior that you're wanting to change. I don't know. Maybe some people can. There is a big struggle to change, and this would be another graphic that might be helpful to show a client, because it's just kind of an up and a down, and there are some of the different emotions that people might feel through the change process. And then you can see the little man with his angel wings is getting, like a gradual acceptance of what things are doing, and then he's ready to move forward. So all these things are really normal. And I think it's helpful to normalize that with clients, for them to know that everybody feels some anxiety and some fear and some guilt and depression when they're trying to make a change. It's not, it's not just something that they might be feeling. It's just something that we all might experience. And here's the readiness ruler again. This is from Org Code. This is one of my favorite tools with housing-focused case management because it's so simple and so easy to use. The client at the top they choose an area where they want to make a change. And, this could be anything. It could be, I want to go back to school. I want to finish my degree. I want to get a job. I want to keep my house cleaner. And then I want to, the substance use, I want to stop or reduce using a certain substance. But again, this goal needs to be the client's goal. And sometimes when I've tried to work with people on this readiness ruler, it's like they'll say, well, I don't really have any goals. I don't have anything I want to change. And, sometimes people are happy with literally how everything is in their life. And when that happens, I just will kind of like encourage the client to think on it, and to kind of ponder about it and think if there is anything they would like to change, even if it's something small. And then you can go through the importance and the readiness and the confidence. Those are the three main things that you have to make a change. There's our struggle to change again. Okay, so this also comes with the org code stuff. And these are super helpful. There are some conversation prompts that can help you figure out what to say to people. So you can see it's kind of small, but you can get this off of Org Code, the website that I shared in the other presentation. I believe it was orgcode.com. It was pretty easy. orgcode.com. Like when they've marked something between a 0 and a 3, you can ask them, why did you mark yourself 3? Why did you not mark yourself higher? Why did you not mark yourself lower? And so, just to kind of get the conversation flowing on that. And then there are some prompts for if they marked between 4 and 7. And if they marked between 8 and 10, you can just talk about all those things. And you can use this readiness ruler more than once. So if like you did a home visit or had a session with a client and you did the readiness ruler, give them a copy of it, but then hang on to a copy yourself, and then you can revisit it later. And maybe a month later, you can get it back out and say, well, let's look at your readiness ruler and see if you want to make any changes. Has your goal become any more or less important to you over the past month? Are you feeling any more ready to make a change? And those kind of things. So you can keep it for a while and kind of see. And then there's even a prompt at the bottom for if the person has moved backwards on the ruler. So if you've looked at it once, more than once, and their confidence has decreased, or their importance has decreased, then you can ask them, what do you need to do to move it in the other direction? Again, what was working for a while, so something was working, and then you can ask them what changed. What have you learned about yourself? That's a good question to ask. And so you'll notice that these questions are open-ended questions. They're not just a yes or no. They're questions that invite the client to talk a little bit more. And something that's really helpful for you to practice as a case manager is practice letting the client, sit in some silence when they're thinking about these questions. This is really hard to do if you're like me and you kind of are a nervous talker, where you just feel like every bit of silence has to be filled up with words. And if you're not talking, I'm going to. But it's important to let them ponder and think. And so if you ask the question, what have you learned about yourself? Then stop and just even count in your head to like 5 or 6 or even 10, and just don't say anything else. Don't say anything until the client starts talking, and just let them talk. And like I said, that's really, really hard to do. Very easy to say, but it's really hard to do. So what motivational interviewing is not, it is not motivational speaking. It's not your time for a TED Talk. It's not your time to be confrontational with a client. And it's not your time to preach to a client about anything. Basically, it's not about you, it's about them. And like, if you're anything like me, I'm a mother, and sometimes it's hard to not be like preachy about things because, I think I know best, and I could just we could just save a lot of time if I just tell you what's best and you just listen to me. But that's not good. That's not going to help a client change at all, and it's actually probably going to get on their nerves very much. So one way to avoid this is to stick to facts, not opinions. So you can do a little bit of gentle confrontation with facts only. For example, my client, I mentioned this in the last session, the client who was having a lot of trouble with alcoholism, and he was getting arrested for public intoxication. So those are the facts. He was arrested for public intoxication. He knew it, I knew it, we all knew it. And so that's something we could talk about. And that's not something to ignore, because that is a problem. He doesn't want to be in jail, so we could talk about that gently. And, I could say something like, you had an arrest for public intoxication. That is a fact. I know you don't want to go to jail. That's another fact. So what can we do to, keep that from happening? And in those statements, since they're facts, you're not being preachy, and you're not being rude, and you're not being, especially confrontational, but you are able to let the client know that, this is what's going on. Like, this is the reality of the situation. And if you think about that, again, in terms of like medical motivational interviewing, my husband had a heart attack a few years ago. And, when he met with his doctors, they were like, they don't tell you necessarily their opinions. Doctors are just very, upfront, and like, this is what happened, and this is what's happening in your body, and these are the changes that you need to make, and you need to get on board with them, so you're not back here, so you're not back in this situation again. So sometimes it's helpful to think about things in some of the different scenarios of motivational interviewing that you can have. So I've got 2 videos. One is a good example of motivational interviewing and one is a bad example. So I'm going to play these and hopefully you guys will be able to hear them just fine. But let's see.
Dr. Steve, some time. I'm glad that you're here. I was curious.
Well, I can see that absolutely because of increasing stress and anxiety that kind of get the best of me. And in the course of my appointment, he was asking how I was dealing with that stress. And I mentioned that my 1 or 2 glasses of wine a few months a week is turning into more frequent and maybe 3 problems. And he had some concern about that and he could help me with stress or something.
Yeah, so you're actually here because you're looking for increased stress. And he's concerned that your alcohol consumption may be part of that increase. Prior to prescribing anything, you want to make sure you use that some.
I suppose.
So you're feeling okay, thank you. You say here that you had 4 or more drinks in 1 week. Maybe increasing that as well. And you want to drinks in 1 setting.
Typically.
Yeah. And maybe monthly have more than that. What drinks do you have? What do you drink?
Wine and meals, and 1 or 2 typically, and more frequently 3 or 4. So my stress is increased.
So it's not increases based on what you put here, you give you 6 points on this scale. Between 0 to 40. So 6 points will put you in what we would consider an at-risk zone. So if it's okay with you, let's talk a little about that.
Okay.
So the risk that runs 0 to 40, it's not so high, so it's certainly a good risk for maybe stress, physical, if you would increase looking from there, where you're staying there. This is a typical standard drink size over here. I'm not sure that fits your prescription of a glass of wine or not.
I filled a glass up, so maybe a little more than
Yeah,
that.
maybe a little space. So perhaps a drink and a half each one. So that will also increase a little bit more. So perhaps drink more than you indicated on here. And for healthy women your age, no more than 3 drinks in 1 setting is considered to be low or no risk, and no more than 7 in 1 week.
7
in 1 week. What you say here is that on the sheet you would perhaps already do more than that. So what make of that?
News to me. I thought that wine meals to be healthy and once in a week, that seems kind of prohibitive.
Yeah, it seems a little less than you've been drinking. So this is conflicting information out there about what's happening and what's not healthy. I imagine the increased stress is what we're concerned about. As your stress increases, and it would describe anything, some interaction between the 2, the course of it and something. So what is it that you like about alcohol?
Well, it does at least temporarily reduce my stress. And like a good glass of wine. Don't drink the cheap stuff. I like the.
So you have a taste of it. Have some of the stress, which is that. What else brings about alcohol?
Well, maybe I have a couple more glasses than I should. I wake up feeling kind of yuck. And part of my stress is finances, and I mentioned I like this stuff. So drinking more and not increasing my financial.
Kim, I don't think the video is working. It's cutting out for a lot of people. So maybe we can share the links.
Okay. I know. I don't know how to make videos work well. It could be my internet. It could be just me trying to play something. I know sometimes my professors in class have to like share their sound and do like different things, but I can put these links also in chat, and you can watch those on your own time again. Like I said, it's a good example and a bad example, and so it is kind of, if you're interested and want to learn a little bit more about how to use this technique, these are two, pretty short videos. It looks like this one's about 9 minutes. The other one, I don't know how long it is. I feel like it was a bit shorter, maybe like 6 minutes or so. So I'll put both of those links in the chat, and you can watch those if you want to. And like I said, once you use these techniques with clients, it's definitely something good to add to your resume, so you can find all that stuff. Okay, so let me add those links into the chat, and then we have just a few minutes left if anybody has any questions, or if you've used motivational interviewing before and you want to add something else. I hate to assume that nobody knew anything about it, because you may know a lot more than me. So if anybody has anything, just feel free, and I will throw those links in the chat if I can get to them again.
Why Miss Clark? I'm on it.
Okay, so there's one. There's a good example. And here's the bad example. There you go. So if you guys want to watch those, when on your time, or if you want to watch those to add to some of your at-home time, feel free to do that. So that's really all that I have. That's, a few minutes early, but you can go ahead and round it up to an hour. I'll just make the executive decision that you can do that. I'll say it's okay.
Okay, well, if anyone doesn't have any questions or anything like that, again, Kim does work at HHCK with us. So if you want to contact her, her contact information is on HHCK's website. And I'm sure if you want to reach out to her, if you have very specific situations that happen throughout your service year, and you think it would be a good resource, Kim would love to help out.
Yes, I would, very much so, and especially this year, because I'm so sad about being at home alone I really need people. So if you want to call me or Zoom with me, it would make me really happy because I miss my coworkers.
Yeah, and we might be able to like offer some other trainings. We can brainstorm like throughout the year and see what kind of what are like what people are like thinking would be like a good training that maybe we can do by, you know, Ring Central again, like another virtual training. We can try to set something up too that could be helpful with, you know, case management during a pandemic.
For sure.
Well, I think that is going to wrap up today's training. We will have all of the presentations uploaded to HHCK's website soon. And we will have recordings and everything uploaded to YouTube. So you'll have multiple ways to access this and review it on your own time or later if something comes up or if you just want a refresher or whatever it may be. Caitlin, is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh,
Yeah.
you're welcome, Caitlin, and everybody. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I get lonely, so it's nice to be able to talk to people. The one thing, if you guys don't want to watch the motivational interviewing videos, that's whatever, but I really would love for you all to watch that TED Talk on, it was from the previous presentation, but I think it's still in the chat box if you weren't in the other one. The TED Talk on compassion fatigue is really good, and it's really helpful. So if you're going to watch anything, watch that one. And it's good and entertaining, but it's really important in this line of work to you know, make time for self-care and not burn yourself out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we hope everyone has a great weekend. And everyone that's on this call, we will reach out to everyone in our program just to kind of follow up and just send out like a follow-up email and wrap everything up on Monday. So everyone, we hope you have a good restful weekend, and thank you again for the trainings, Kim.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Yeah.